Hello and welcome to the Studio 7 podcast with your hosts Joshy Lee and Luciano D'Amato.
Right, hello listeners.
Hello.
Welcome to a new and very special edition of the Studio 7 podcast. New because it is our latest scheduled episode, and this one is going back east,
Going back east.
the return of Asian cinema. So we're going to be talking about Korean cinema, Korean films, their impact on the Western world and the industry as a whole. Compare them with some Western films, and break down their themes and motifs, and then give you some recommendations.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Also a new setup.
Yeah, so that's why it's special. So thank you for picking up on that second point. And that's why it's special today, because we have a new layout. And we're hoping this is going to be more interactive. And
That's the whole point. We want to spark conversation with you. So instead of us just talking and to each other, we thought, well, if we turn to you guys and have the conversation that way, hopefully you'll feel more inclined to
get involved,
to get involved. Yeah.
Throw us suggestions as well.
Yeah. And also you'll see as well, this podcast is just going to constantly evolve. We've already got more ideas of how it could look and feel, and how we're going to bring some guests in, hopefully, after we start hitting a few benchmark episodes.
Yeah. So what we're trying to say is this isn't even our final form.
We're still evolving.
Yeah. So this is like the middle one. This is like the what's after Charmander?
Chameleon,
that's it. So this is our Charmeleon phase. Give us a little while, we'll soon be Charizard.
Yeah.
Right. So, episode 7. Is it episode 7 or episode 8?
8 now.
It's 8, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
8 now.
Episode 8, Going Back East, the return of Asian cinema. So, just before we jump in, I'm just going to fire off 3 facts. The first one is the first on-screen kiss in a South Korean film was 1954. So that's actually 60 years after the first Western kiss on screen.
No way.
Yeah. I think that one was, 1989? 1889?
4 years later, they're chopping people up.
Yeah, I mean...
Rape scenes.
It took them ages just to get to a first kiss. And then, like you said, 4 years later, and... They've surpassed Western cinema, yeah. Well, I think you could argue with The Handmaiden, they had the first... How would you describe that?
It's like, how do you describe that?
Yeah, well, that'll come back up later, so I'll leave that for now. The second fact is Kim Jong-il, the father of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who's in charge at the moment, he was a film buff. And this was actually touched upon in Team America, World Police. Do you remember? Yeah.
Was it?
I think that was the whole message behind, part of the message behind it, of it being involving actors going to North Korea and him sort of letting them...
No way.
Yeah. I only put this together after seeing this fact. But anyway, he was a film buff, so much so that he actually kidnapped 2 South Koreans, an actress and a director who were married. Yeah, they were husband and wife. Took him back to North Korea and made them make films for him for years.
Jesus Christ.
Crazy, right? And the last one is, so this might have changed since Parasite. I haven't double checked, or it might change soon with Parasite. But as of last year, the highest grossing South Korean film of all time was called The Admiral, Roaring Currents, which grossed 140 mil worldwide, and was to do with the Japanese-Korean War. So I think that might be why, because it had fans from both Korea and Japan going to see it.
We'll touch upon that later as well. There's a lot of political storylines and whatnot, and metaphors and things that come into Korean cinema, but we'll touch upon that later.
Yeah. So, with that out of the way, I guess we should explain a little bit about why we're doing this episode, and then go into the background of Korean and Asian cinema.
Yeah. We're mainly focusing on South Korean, but we will mention Chinese, Japanese cinema as well. But yeah, we just felt like that it was coming to a surge. There was going to be a point where something was going to pop up again.
Yeah.
And obviously, we were scheduled to do this in the decades video, which we did
Yes.
mention at the end of the decades video. But obviously, we put that off because that one was like our longest podcast yet. It was like 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So we were like, yeah, let's cut that.
And also, we were kind of waiting to see what would happen at the Oscars with Parasite and how that affected it.
Yeah.
Which might have been a bit of a misstep because it would have like solidified us predicting.
Yeah.
So like a little bit more background is last year, I think probably around the time Parasite started making waves at Cannes. And then going forward, the hype that sort of started to build after that, we kind of had an idea. I mean, it felt similar to when Oldboy, the original Oldboy, had its sort of original release.
Yeah.
I had the same feeling there, and I just felt like if Parasite is as good as people are saying and it does well at the Oscars, then we're going to have another period where Asian and particularly Korean cinema is coming to our shores more frequently.
New wave.
And yeah, it looks like that is what's happening. So again, tying back into Hollywood introductions and premonitions. Again. So yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Parasite did go on and did go on and do well. And now everyone's kicking up a storm and everyone's looking for the next what to watch next, basically. So at the end we will be given a few recommendations. We haven't seen everything. We're not claiming that we've seen everything. We're not claiming that but
I think we should have a little sort of disclaimer, saying that this is based on our knowledge of Korean and Asian cinema, which
our experiences
of it, which is probably a little bit more than general film goers, but definitely not complete
as the hardcore fans.
or as in depth as some of the hardcore fans. And that's cool. I mean, I'm still discovering Korean and Asian cinema. I'm really looking forward to at some point going back and seeing some of their more historic works, which I just haven't had the time to do recently, and it makes sense to focus on the more current ones at the moment. But with the success of Parasite, more of the old ones are coming up, are available on different websites to view, as well as YouTube. So there's definitely change in the water.
Definitely.
So just to go into the background of Korean cinema. Now, when I say background, I'm talking about the last time we had a surge of this kind of cinema, which was back in the early 2000s, as far as I'm aware. And this was ignited, I'd say, by Oldboy. Because what people don't realise is that was actually sort of the second film in a trilogy. And people went into. I mean, you don't have to watch them all together, which is the cool thing about it.
They're not joint in any way.
No,
even the characters. I mean, the actors double up and play different characters in each of the films as
exactly.
well. It's not like it's kind of same universe kind of idea, but it's more. The only main theme is vengeance, revenge.
It's more thematic, just the idea about vengeance. And that was the last time we had a surgence, but it didn't last forever.
No.
And to be honest, I think if we probably go back and look at Korean cinema more historically, I'm sure there's like a pattern where this has happened almost cyclically, where, sort of every 10, 15 years, there seems to be a film that captures people's imagination and then brings it to everyone's attention. Now, the only thing that's sort of worrying me is when is it going to be where it comes and it stays? And there's a steady stream.
I'm hoping that's what's happening now, because there's a few things that Bong JoonHo did mention during his festival run, and he was saying, like, don't be afraid of the subtitles, don't, have faith in foreign cinema, and, you want to experience new cultures, new films, new ideas, new storylines, new structures, blah, blah, blah. Watch foreign cinema. I'm hoping that through him winning and now him having even more of a bigger voice than he did anyway as the growing auteur that he is, I'm hoping now that people will take that on and not remake so much, and kind of leave it to the originals. Definitely bring Korean and Asian film directors over to Western cinema, because so when they've done that so far, nearly, I'd say 70-80% of the time they transfer relatively well.
There's been a few misses, but I'd argue, and this will come up later, those misses were because of Western intervention. And just quickly, one off the top of my head is The Great Wall, which was Zhang Yimou, the Chinese director, came over and did his first Western film, and starring Matt Damon, and it was didn't get great reviews, didn't do that well at the box office. But yeah, we'll get onto that in a bit.
Another thing as well, which I think is gonna let it down, which it shouldn't do because it's just been blown out of the water, is this whole thing with coronavirus at the moment.
Yes.
I'm really hoping, because people seem to be using that as an excuse to harbour racism, which is...
You don't think that's connected at all, do you? Sorry, my conspiracy head just came on there. Like, do you think, like, the States were like, okay, we'll let them, win the Best Picture, Best Foreign Film, Best Director,
dumb it down,
and then we'll, like, put a blanket over it, sort of, with the coronavirus, so that people...
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't put it past.
Yeah.
That's scary.
But I'm just hoping that people can kind of see past it, and people can kind of open their eyes a little bit more and realize that if you actually look into the research of whatever's going on right now, you're fine, you're safe, everything's okay. There's no need to use it as a weapon against anyone. So I'm hoping that that's not going to hinder anything that's going on right now with this huge surge and movement in Asian cinema. Because I do feel like that will deter a lot of people. I
mean, not just that, but it has had an effect in that it's taken people's attention off of Parasite and the Oscar win and all of that. And it's taken our attention off a lot of things, actually. And that is the worrying thing about it. That it's not just the people that are falling ill and rest in peace passing away. It's the longer lasting, wider effects.
Yeah, and it's also as well, there's other movements that have been taking massive leaps, even in this year, in like a couple months. Obviously, there seems to be a lot more kind of equality in certain areas, and there's also a lot more people kind of waking up to the idea of things. Like there's the whole vegan movement. Joaquin Phoenix winning the Oscar and talking about dairy products and all this kind of stuff, and even releasing his own documentary. But that's flown right under the radar.
I actually think you've hit something on the nail here. You've hit a nail on the head here. Because that was one of the big things that had me feeling so good out of this year's awards season, was that
it was used as a platform.
It was used as a platform. There was a lot of great films that were discussed and talked about, and a lot of great filmmakers got due credit that they deserve. But there was also a lot of talk about wider issues like ethnic minorities being properly represented and awarded. Like you said about the meat industry and global warming. About social class structures with Bong JoonHo and Parasite. With mental illness with the Joker, and now with coronavirus, that's all anybody wants to talk about. Everyone's forgot about all those issues, and it does make you think sometimes: is this intentional? But just to go back,
digressing a little bit.
Digressing as we always do. I mean, if you're still watching now, you know how we roll. Bear with us. Going back to around the early 2000s, I remember for me there were sort of two main avenues that sort of kept me up to date with Asian cinema. One was Western remakes of Asian cinema films. You remember films like The Grudge and The Ring, and then they kept firing them off. I think they did like pretty much all those Japanese horror films they did a Western version of. There was also animes which were getting Western releases on DVD for the first time. So like Akira and Lupe and other shows like that. Which
to be honest, that whirlwind's never really stopped. There's like a hardcore group of fans who have kept that alive. So that's awesome. We're just kind of hoping that this happens again.
That's the thing with
live action.
With the animation, it seems to be that it's probably relatively more cost effective to produce, so they can have like a smaller fan base and keep it going. But with the cinema, maybe they need more viewers to be putting money back into it. So yeah, we were getting loads of big budget American remakes, left, right, and center, and then Hollywood saturated the market essentially. And then what they also did was, I mean, it was a good thing because for me, what it was doing was turning me over to the originals, and I was watching them and comparing them, and I quickly realized that the originals were 9 times out of 10
A lot better.
a lot better. So I think that probably did happen with a lot of other people as well.
Yeah.
Is they ended up getting drawn back to the cinema, the original films.
Yeah. The other thing as well is like, but that worked with some of them because some of them they actually marketed to say that they were remakes, but a lot of them, as a lot of Western films, they didn't, and they kind of just claimed it as almost like it was an original piece.
Yeah.
And like one of the big ones of that is The Departed.
Yes.
With Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
A lot of people think that's an original piece, but it's not. It's a
I know a lot of
remake.
people who think that's Martin Scorsese's best film or one of their favorites. Yeah. As in they're not so keen on the old school mafioso gangster, but they enjoy this more modern day.
Yeah.
Which you can see his.
Well, there's a
whole, see his touch on it.
Yeah,
100%.
There's a whole other kind of niche with that, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who I love detective films and thrillers and things like that. So yeah, I can definitely see that, and it was kind of like a mold of the two. It was like detective / modern gangster. So yeah, I can see how he could have his twist and effect on it, and how people can kind of come in maybe from other areas where they've came from the detective genre and was like, oh, now I like Scorsese stuff because he's doing this.
And eventually they just stopped being lucrative. So I'm thinking that's for two reasons. One, some people were drawn back to the originals, and then the other thing is people were getting fed up of these, lower quality remakes and reboots and whatever. But it did do its job for a while. It opened the floodgates, and we had an influx of some Asian film for a while. Some even got some Western theatre releases in dub form, like House of Flying Daggers and Hero, which were both Zhang Yimou films, before being released later on in DVD in the original Chinese and Mandarin. Again, films that I was huge fans of at the time. But then following that, there seemed to be like a dry spot. It just sort of...
It is stages though, isn't it? Because it went through a time where there wouldn't be subtitles, it would be dubbed.
Yeah.
And now they've allowed for people to, read the subtitles.
Sounds stupid to say, doesn't it?
But it is a thing though. People some people look at a book and the size of the book and then go, oh, I don't want to read that book. That's going to take me like however many weeks or months or whatever to finish that, to have the time.
Yeah.
People might even look at it in the same way as a foreign film. They're like, well, I don't understand what's going on. I've got to read it while I'm watching. I just, go and watch English language. I can see the argument, but you literally forget about the subtitles, like not even 5 minutes into the film. And normally they're able to drag you into the story and you just completely are immersed. And you don't realise that you're reading the subtitles.
That's a good point.
And it's the same with when you're reading a book as well. That gets to a point where you forget you're reading and you're just imagining all these, worlds and stuff in your head.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of patience and a little bit of practice. I think. You keep doing it, the easier it gets, and the less you even realise that there's words on the screen. Yeah. So yeah, following that, there was like a dry spot. From the mid to late 2000s to now, so the past decade really. There were still films coming out. There were some big ones, but they didn't have the same commercial or worldwide critical success that I think they were having in the early 2000s. So I'm talking about films like I Saw the Devil by Kim Ji-woon, Train to Busan by Yong Sang-ho, films like The Wailing by Na Hong-jin, as in they did captivate small dedicated audiences, but for other people, the large, the masses, the recognition sort of slipped by. I'll admit I was one of those people. But it comes down to media again. It's like it's very easy, like as we were just saying then with the coronavirus, and it's like a perfect example. The media can shove something in your face whether it has an importance or not. And I think it did go through a spell where nothing was reaching us just because the marketing wasn't there. It was like, should we even bother to spend the money and pushing it in the Western world if it's just going to go into
some on-demand thing, or
Yeah.
you know, we'll get it into. They'll put the money to get it into the festivals. If people don't want to pick it up from the festivals, then they'll just spend all the marketing back home and get their money back domestically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that comes down to it as well, because I remember not seeing stuff. I thought it was like a every now and then thing, but no, if you actually just look, you'll find it.
Yeah.
But it's because it's not in your face, you don't feel like there's a hunger to go out and watch it.
So it's the media dictating the narrative, really. You know, people wouldn't have even known about Parasite if the media hadn't jumped on the hype around that and used that. Yeah. And I think that's partly just because over the New Year period, there actually wasn't a lot going on news-wise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously they would have pushed it anyway, but I think they were pushing it even more because they didn't have any other things to really talk about.
Yeah.
And now that Corona's come out, now they're talking about that, and they forgot about all these other things. They've dropped it. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but I do feel it's like it's partly the media, but it's also partly audiences. And I'm speaking from my own perspective here. Got lazy and stopped.
That's what I mean. If you look for it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And just because it wasn't in front of our faces, we just weren't looking for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is definitely 50-50.
So yeah, I gotta hold my hand up there.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you do look at the timeline, it did allow for French cinema to have a little bit of limelight. Yeah, Indonesia's cinema with Gareth Evans and The Raid allowed them to come up a bit. There was also Spanish cinema, you know, with stuff like Raw, the horror film, and then South American as well, you know, and more so South American directors, you know, or Spanish based directors like Guillermo del Toro and Alfonso Cuarón and people like that.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't last as long, and it wasn't as sort of wide-reaching as Korean and Asian cinema back in the early 2000s, but it did give them a good chance to get their sort of messages out there.
Yeah.
And each of those different countries have very distinct types of films. So I guess in the end it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
You know? And now we've gone back to Korean. So it might happen that Korean cinema sort of drops off again in a few years' time, but then we go back through the cycle of looking at the other countries.
Yeah, I do feel like it's going to be stages, because I'm hoping that we're getting to a place where it's an everyday thing to go to the cinema, and there'll be, you know, instead of it all just being English language or dubbed, there'll be, you know, a nearer equal amount of foreign films to non-English language films to English language films.
Yeah.
In like the main cinemas, not independent cinemas, like main chains.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's where we're going towards. It's just a case of people have to get comfortable with the idea first.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is if you look at like our local Cineworld, they screen a lot of Polish and Indian films because we have, you know, a big Polish and Indian community, essentially. So it's not that they can't do it and they're not willing to do it. They just need to know that they're going to make money from it. So if people start going and watching Parasite now, or whichever other Korean films come out, you're basically voting with your wallet. So, you know, it's no good just going around saying, oh yeah, I really like Parasite, you know, but if you haven't gone to see it in the cinema, or you haven't bought it on DVD, it doesn't really count as a vote, and, you know, won't make a difference to the studios or the studio heads. So it's another thing to keep in mind. So yeah, anyway, after we had this sort of gap of Asian cinema, all of a sudden 2019 comes around and Bong JoonHo sweeps the 92nd Oscars, ushering in a new wave of Asian and Korean cinema. Something which we think was sort of alluded to earlier on last year, or I think so anyway, with the Palme d'Or. So yeah, that brings us up to date to the modern day. Do you want to take us forward? Oh, there is something I wanted to mention, is just as a little sort of warning. We did speak about this earlier, in that we don't want it to be a case of, right, we see what Korea's cinema is doing and it's really good. Now let's take that and strip it from them and use it in our own cinema and not credit them or not allow them to do it with their own originality.
Yeah.
Which could be an issue because there's word already out about Bong JoonHo and Adam McKay, I think it is, doing
the director of Vice and
yes, The Big Short.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, about joining up to co-produce a limited series, I think, for Western audiences, or I think worldwide audiences, but it's unclear at the moment, and this is what's worrying me, because Tilda Swinton and Mark Ruffalo are attached to Star, which they're not going to be speaking Korean.
So this is for Parasite. So they've came out saying that there's going to be a limited TV show because originally Bong JoonHo said he's got loads of ideas for this film and he struggled to put them down and he just basically chucked them all onto a notepad and had to get a co-writer to help him, just manage everything. And at first he was saying it was going to be a stage play and then a TV show and all this kind of stuff. So he whittled it down to a film. That film's, as we said, sent out a shockwave in the industry. And now obviously people are trying to jump in to gain off that, which happens a lot, as we've also mentioned. We're just hoping that because there's a few contradicting things that have been mentioned is that Bong Joon-ho said that this is going to explain things that happen in between the film, but then they've cast English speaking actors and they've said it's going to be produced in America. So how is it going to be happening in between the scenes? Or are we going to be experiencing, because it's a TV show, we're going to be experiencing families from all around the world in different situations? Like, it's very...
That's what I was...
Yeah, it's... Yeah,
that seems like
be interesting.
The logical route.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out what exactly is going to happen with it.
It's planned,
Yeah.
The other thing is, looking at, based on the topic of the film, it's very easy for them to get lost. As in, now the film is about social and class structures and how there's not a fair divide of money and wealth, right? So now, an American probably big production company who's got a lot of money anyway is going to come in and snap up Bong Joon-ho's idea and profit off it.
Yeah.
Right? Is that not exactly what the film is talking about?
Yeah.
Is the big rich guy coming in and using the hard labor of the poor guy to make a profit, and then not really giving him his dues.
Yeah. So I feel like the industry is supporting the film, which is amazing, and was a huge shock. We're just hoping that they kind of stick to it, because there's also I Saw the Devil remake in the making, and there's probably a load of others that we don't know about.
Yeah.
I just feel like maybe instead of doing that, maybe if you got the distribution rights, maybe push it that way.
Yeah.
There's other ways to bring it into Western audiences and make that buck that you need, instead of going and making it digestible for, English language, when they could quite easily just go and watch the film and read the subtitles and experience for the film for what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it now, but just off that I Saw the Devil point, I can't... It won't work as well as it did in the Korean version, because a lot of what makes the difficult topics and themes relatable is how they're presented, which is done in a Korean culture fashion, which the West is a bit too prude to do.
Yeah.
So it'll be so different. It will literally be a remake in name only, because it won't, and it'll have the basic plot points, but it won't have the same feel.
It'll literally just be a cat and mouse.
Yeah. Which
thriller film
they've done before, Yeah.
It
won't have those nuanced, deeper, layered, emotional aspects.
No.
I can't see it.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But we're hopeful. We are hopeful. So that kind of sums up a background on Korean and Asian cinema over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we can go back any further than that.
No.
legitimately, as in, we're only like
Yeah.
20 odd years old ourselves. So, and I think that's enough to sort of set up our next section, which is comparisons.
Yeah, it's kind of just going through and kind of working out the difference between Western and Eastern cinema. Why it works, kind of a good segue really, because why it kind of works in you know Eastern cinema and doesn't always and naturally translate into Western.
Yeah.
Some of that is cultural, some of that is environmental, like geographical, and some of that is also just style. Even it may not seem like it, but a lot of regions do have their own kind of style, and yes, then their directors come in and the filmmakers come in and then manipulate that style in their own style.
It's a style upon a style.
Yeah.
Styleception.
So kind of going into that, like one main thing that you'll notice a lot in Korean cinema is the contrast in mixing genres. So normally in Western cinema, you will occasionally and a lot of the time find a mix of maybe two or three. So you'll get a horror with a little bit of comedy, or
or drama with a little bit of romance.
Yeah, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what I've got done here is more like for the horror kind of area, because I think it's an easier way to get the idea across.
Yeah.
So the way I've put it down is Western horror is like walking into your house knowing that someone's in there and knowing that you're going to get scared. So you're prepared to get scared the whole time you're walking through into every single room. You're prepared to have a jump scare. But instead, Korean cinema is almost like, you're walking towards the doorway and then your phone would ding and then it'll be like, oh, your grandma's calling for tea or something. You'll be like, oh, hey grandma, how's it going?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, how's this, blah blah blah. Then you'll turn around and the guy's there with a knife and then you're like, oh my god, I didn't even flip in. Oh, okay, there you are. It subverts expectation. I think that's like the best way to explain Korean cinema.
Can I just add to that? I would also say it's like with Western horror films, it's like you're living the horror film basically, whereas with Korean and Asian films, it's more like this is a film about someone and their life, and then there's horror elements involved. Do you know what I mean? Which is great because it makes it more realistic, it makes it more believable, it makes it more relatable, which entices you into the film more and gets you caring about them more.
Because there's a great example for that is in the Wailing. There are going to be minor spoilers throughout this also, just to let you know. In the Wailing, there's there's a few different jump scares. So obviously in the film, they're like zombie-ish, kind of possessed zombies, I guess you could kind of say.
Kind of Wreck vibes. If you've seen that, the Spanish zombie film.
Yeah, definitely. So there's the two. Well, I think there's three actually. The first few jump scares or scary scenes, they are played for what it is, face value. You're meant to be scared of this creature or these creatures. Then there's this one where they first try and mix the main character with the opposing threat, and it's played off as a joke. There is a crowd around him. She's jumping all over him. He's there screaming like a little kid, going, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And then she's there like acting like a wild animal. And I was killing myself laughing. And loads of people around him looking at him like, "You're an idiot. You're a cop. You're supposed to be the big hard guy." Freaking out over this like crazed, half burnt woman going mad at you. So then you are made to feel relaxed for when the next time they come into the scene, you're now going to be assuming that it's going to be played off as a comedic moment again, or the idea of the threat has now been completely taken away because you laughed at it.
It's a full sense of security.
So it's like, oh, that monster was funny, so I'm not going to laugh anymore because I'm not going to be scared anymore. I mean, you're ready to laugh. But no, that's when they'll smack you in the face with, no, this is even scarier than the first two times that you watched it. And they'll keep doing this back and forth all the way through the film, constantly throwing you off guard, to the point when it hits the ending. and again they subvert expectation. There's always like a little end twist in the film. You just feel completely mentally and emotionally worn.
Yeah. I just want to add to that, because I think that is one of the key things about Korean and Asian cinema is the comedy. They specifically, I think, blend comedy with like violence and horror, as well as like sexuality, which I believe is partly a cultural thing. Because of their history and their mythology, they're more comfortable talking about death and sex and things like that. Whereas over here, we're still too prude. It's like, oh yeah, you can't joke about someone dying. Well, it's not a joke to take the mick. It's a joke to either it would be for one or two reasons. It's either to show these characters as more three-dimensional and human, so you can see other aspects they're not just like one-dimensional archetypes, like the girl who's always going around crying and grieving because her boyfriend died, for example. Do you know what I mean? No, I mean, in real life, when people die, when someone dies, people do grieve, but there's other things happening in your life as well, and you will have moments of laughter and happiness in between that. And that's something that they understand and they use as a way to make you feel to familiarize you to familiarize the audience with the characters on screen, essentially.
Because it's a quick way to break the ice. It's a quick way to feel for that person. Because as soon as you experience the extreme emotions of a person, you almost feel like you know them.
Yes.
So it is another way to kind of just kickstart you into their life, basically, and introduce you into their lifestyle. Yeah.
Really good point. So yeah, another example. I think this was the first time I recognized it as a viewer. Was The Host, which is Bong JoonHo's creature feature film, which is arguably what should have been just a monster movie. If it was done in the Western sense, it would be.
Oh, it would have been. It would have went under the radar.
Yeah, it would have been like Godzilla 1998. You know what I mean? Like nobody would have thought much of it, but Bong elevates it to a whole nother level. And one of the ways he does this is using comedy and blending genres. So in one sense, it's a movie. It's a monster movie about a creature created by the illegal dumping of toxic waste. Formaldehyde. Yeah. It's also a dramedy about a dysfunctional family who are all uniquely talented, but separated in ways, and through dealing with the loss of their youngest member, sort of come together and realize their unique talents and how they can work together to be a fully functioning unit. And then the third is also a commentary maybe on the media and their part in deceiving the public for the benefit of companies or politicians or whatever, and trying to cover up what's actually going on.
You'll find this a lot. Like they'll have a storyline, so that's an arc. Then they'll have themes that run throughout the whole the film, and then they'll also have really in-depth and interesting character arcs. So, and they all get concluded nearly all the time. They are always concluded, and I think that's what makes these films so interesting, is because, like, another point that I've got as well is like on information, is that they only give away small amounts, and they don't ever really spoon feed you information. They allow you to work out what's going on your own. Which for me, I prefer those kind of films where I have to kind of work 100%. For the answers, where it ends and I still, I have a conclusion to what's going on, so I could leave happily and just go about my day. But also there's like, a few little areas where I'm like, oh, what did that shot mean? Like they must have chose that for a reason. What was that, little red herring with like the rock in the stone in Parasite and all that kind of stuff. Like things you can go away and like think about and dig deep on. And the same with Host as well. Like with all the separate family members, they all had these really interesting arcs, and they almost all of them, even if it's so subtle and so small, like the auntie or the sister to the main character, she's got a chance to hit bullseye and become a world champion, and she misses.
Well,
and
she doesn't
then-
even fire, does she?
Oh no,
At first.
she doesn't fire. Yeah, because she
pulls out at the last second.
she
bottles it.
bottles it under pressure.
Yeah.
And then later on in the film, there's that point. Then obviously there's all the other bits like where she sits in the family and blah 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 to work with other people's arcs. And then at the end of the film, when the monster's coming towards her, she doesn't buckle under the pressure and she shoots it and gets the monster in the eye.
Yeah.
So like there's all these little things.
Bullseye.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all these really interesting kind of small bits. If you can pick up on them, then you're going to be extremely satisfied.
Yeah, and just to go back to the comedy part, there's one particular scene that I think shows this quite well. So after the initial monster attack, they're all rehoused in a local sports hall center. And there's like a shrine built for all the people who had died or missing from the initial attack. And anyway, as the family all arrive and they see the shrine to their missing youngest member, they all start to break down. And it starts off as like a genuinely traumatic scene where you're like heartbroken for them. Like they've just seen their schoolgirl get, eaten by a monster, as far as they know, and dragged away. But then it starts to escalate as they almost start fighting over each other to sort of be the one to honor her the most and the best. And then they cause a huge scene and they're rolling around on the floor and there's the press and like all
taking pictures.
Yeah.
There's like 7 press members snapping pictures of them crying and rolling on the floor. And then security comes over and starts grabbing them, pulling them out. And
it's just a wonderful way of, showing these characters at their most human. So they've lost all sense of sort of formality of focus, which is understandable because they're traumatized, and then they're all there sort of like blaming each other and picking one another, and it starts off like as serious hurtful words, but they're family, so eventually it's going to descend into sort of slapstick jokes and whatever, and it just works really well. It also sets up multiple plot points, introduces you to all the characters really well, shows you how much they care about one another despite being separated and unorganized, because at the start they're not all together. It's just the grandfather, the main character, the father, and his daughter, isn't it, living in this shop. But they all come back. And also we know from this point that they're poor materialistically, but they're rich emotionally and morally. We also see how they're disconnected to one another, but they're willing to help each other when they're called upon. So again, it's quite good parallels as well to Parasite in the way the families were portrayed there.
I think that's a huge thing in Korean cinema is family. That nearly always revolves around family members or a family group. Or the lack of.
Yes.
Sometimes
even I Saw the Devil. Thinking about you just said that.
And there's a lot of connections as well between all the characters, whether it's or uncle this or auntie or brother or something. That could just be a cultural thing where I know in a lot of Asian cultures that they do just call each other brothers and sisters and things like that because it just creates more of a community. And it's a way of paying respect. Like if you see an elder, you would approach them as so to show respect. It could just be something like that. That's just the way of them building on that, or
But I mean, also, and again, this is quite an extended scene, and this is Bong JoonHo. And if you remember our Parasite review, we talked about how in the opening scene there, he sort of uses very few shots to set up the whole film. And for me, in this film, this was the scene that did that. From it you get that the granddad is old world and wise. The dad is stupid but well-meaning and lovable. The brother is a bit more switched on because he's been to university and that and knows about technology and stuff, and that's where he comes in. And then the sister is fit and healthy and an athlete, but she's just unsure of herself, and it's probably because she comes from this family that she's unsure of herself, ironically. And then all of these sort of factors come back up later on in the film. So that's sort of contrasting and genre melding, I've referenced it as, which I think is a big thing in Korean cinema. And also you're getting like 3 or 4 films for the price of one. Another
thing that's a decent comparison is antagonists and threats.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously in films you'll have the protagonist, which is your hero, your lead, the character which you're following and know the most about.
Yeah.
And they're normally going up against a protagonist or a threat of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And normally in Western cinema, they're always trying to find a way of defeating or overcoming a antagonist or threat.
Yeah.
But in Korean cinema, they always look to survive, not defeat. That always seems to be the case.
Yes.
So again, because I don't want to jump around to too many films and spoil too many. But if we stick with The Host,
Mm-hmm.
a great example for that is the ending for The Host is.
Or you could use The Wailing. What was that? That was the other one we were
Yeah, Wailin's another one.
referencing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in there they're trying to survive the experience of what's happening to them. They don't even really know, do they? And they're trying to work it out. There's this illness, and then there's talks of a ghost, and then there's talks of a demon, and it's like, what is it? What's going on?
Yeah.
And really, you get the sense that, well, actually, what you do realize through halfway through the film is that there is no way for them to control this situation. They literally just have to try and survive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's almost like with The Host as well, how this guy who is kind of a failed father in a way is trying to get his daughter back from this monster, and he's having all this stuff happen to him that is completely out of his control, and there's just no way of him getting through it, and he kind of just has to deal with it and wait for an opportunity to arise to go through it instead of seeking for something.
Yes.
And also at the end as well, as we were talking about arcs and things, obviously at the end he eventually escapes all of this other stuff that's happening around him throughout the film, and he manages to kind of loosely corner the monster, and the monster has his daughter in its mouth, and they're trying to get her out, and unfortunately the daughter dies, and you're almost left like, well, why did we spend the whole film trying to save her if she's just going to die? But then you're missing the point, is because the main character, the whole idea is that he is this failed father, and through the monster dying, that's another conclusion.
Yeah.
But then when he pulls his daughter out, she's also been looking after the young kid.
Yes.
And then it concludes with them living in the same kind of shack/shop, where this kid who's wanted food and just wanted to get fed could live in a place where there is constantly food and he could constantly be fed.
Yeah.
And also the main guy can then be the father to this young boy that he could never be to his daughter. So
you just hit on a huge point there, which I missed during my research, which is that, and it ties in directly to antagonists and threats, is that the protagonist, the hero, will have a quote-unquote happy ending, but it won't be the perfect happy ending. No. It'll never be the perfect happy ending. Like over in Western films, you'll likely see the guy defeats a monster, gets the girl, goes home. It turns out his sidekick didn't actually die and survive somehow and comes back. They get married, have kids, and it's all happily ever after. With the Korean films, it's like, okay, he's going to get through this. He's going to maybe get revenge, but he's going to suffer because of it, and it's going to live with him for the rest of his life. In the case of I Saw the Devil. Or with The Host, it's like, yes, he's going to resolve the situation, as in he's going to get his daughter back, but she won't be in the state that he left her in, because he has to be punished for his what's the word, his bad parenting, for example. He's got another chance to make it right now with this new kid, but what he did with his own daughter is too late to be changed. Do you know what I mean? But he does learn from it. He dyes his hair back to his normal color, he dresses smarter, and now he's running the shop properly, and he's not just wasting away. So it's like, you'll get the conclusion that you want and that you're expecting, but not in the way that you're expecting. Another one which a lot of people will realize when watching Korean cinema is obviously it's extremely hyper stylized. Very extreme in probably all areas. Hyper violent as well.
If they're going to show violence, it's violent. If they're going to show gore, it's gory. If they're going to show sex, you're seeing everything. Like, they, as you said as well, like if Western or cinema tried to recreate this, they'd shy away and they'd be covering their eyes halfway through.
Yeah.
But with Korean films, it's like they don't care. Like the intro to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, there's like 4 guys jacking off, listening through a wall.
Mm-hmm. Never seen that before.
What? I remember watching that in college and just being completely thrown back. Like, okay, what is it? What have you just put on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can kind of throw this at you. But then that also goes into kind of like camera work as well. How they always use kind of whip pans and crash zooms and very exaggerated long takes also.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to leave things alone and kind of just let things play out naturally.
Yeah.
And also something else that comes into this as well is it always feels as well like they just let the actors go loose, because some things that you'll also see in Western cinema is it always feels like it's very staged, and you always feel like whenever the scene's going on, sometimes they're done well, but a lot of the times you feel like, no, this feels like a staged fight, or this feels like a scenario where the main character is going to be fine.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
But then in this, it's like, oh, you're just going to hit him. Oh, you're still hitting him. You're hitting him 5 times, 6 times, 7 times.
Oh, you've missed a few times.
You've missed him. You hit the wall.
Yeah.
You've been stabbed.
Oh, you dropped it and you picked it back up.
Yeah. But it feels it's not done in a way of like it's beats. It's not like, boom, you're going to hit him once, then he's going to hit your hand against the wall, then you're going to drop the hammer, and then you're going to pick up the hammer again, and he's going to push you to the floor. It's like, just fight. That's literally what it feels like. Yeah, it's messy, real.
Yeah.
And that's another...
And I think that's why they use those camera techniques as well, because it's messy and real. It's like, for example, in real life, from your perspective, if you hear someone shout, you quickly do a whip pan around, don't you? And you look around for where they are.
Yeah.
Now, in a Western film, they might just do a cut to a wide, and you see the person that was shouting at them, or they do a slow pan. Do you know what I mean? So that you've got time to take in everything, because to them, they put all this money on the screen. They want you to see it. Korean cinema is like, no, let's be real. If this has actually happened, there'll be an urgency. So let's put that urgency on the screen. Yeah.
And then obviously with the violence as well, this has been like a kind of huge topic in Korean cinema over the past decade, is revenge films. We've also kind of touched upon earlier. One of the main ones that most people know about is Oldboy. As a few of you will probably know that it's a part of a trilogy, as we mentioned as well.
So violence in Oldboy?
Yeah. Well, violence in general, really. Just how exaggerated it all is. But also with the revenge genre. I think Korea kind of own that genre. I haven't really seen any other film execute it in the way that they do. And through doing a little bit of research on it, something that kept popping up, which got a few other kind of articles and things posted as well, is there's no direct reasoning, but this could be something, is obviously Korea's had an interesting history.
Oh, yeah.
And
this is interesting.
Yeah, the same way with, obviously, they went through Japanese occupation, multiple wars, geographical and political division, so through North and South. So, and even through that as well, again, I don't want to seem like I'm knowledgeable on all this. I'm still kind of learning and going back and hopefully going to watch a few more of the older Korean films. But there seems to be kind of 10-year segments where filmmakers will come in and drop out, and nearly all the time they always have some kind of political message or statement to make.
Yeah.
But it's never normally, well, sometimes it is. I'd say, a lot of the times it's more subtle, but there are a few times where they are very much in your face.
And sometimes there'll be multiple in one film, and some will be more in your face and some will be more subtle.
Yeah, that you kind of got to look for and find.
Yeah.
But it's like with, I think one of the main ones from Asian cinema, not more Japanese than Korean, is obviously Godzilla.
Yeah. Oh, huge.
Is obviously that they created Godzilla because that was their kind of metaphor for the US coming and dropping the atom bomb.
Yeah.
And it was their way of creatively getting out their story and their side of how they felt this giant monster coming into their land and destroying their towns and their people.
Yeah.
Like
a force of nature that they had no control over.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you'll notice as well, like as we've already mentioned loads with Parasite, is it talks about class divide, and also as well Train to Busan kind of talks about class divide as well.
Huge, yeah. And Snowpiercer, which is a Western film, but made by
Bong JoonHo,
and has quite a few Korean cast and crew members as well. So
but then like
more of a joint production.
But you could quite easily go and watch Train to Busan and just watch it as a very extremely well made, probably arguably one of the best zombie films. And you can quite easily just go and watch it, have fun with it, and turn it off and call it a day. Or you could dig deep and actually start realizing some of these hidden messages within. How there's a scene where the lower class members are being pushed aside while the upper class members lock them behind a transparent door, to the point where if you look at it and kind of strip that scene apart, it's a way of the upper class saying, "Yeah, you know what we're getting up to. You know what you can see us doing. You know that we've shut the door on you and we're not letting you through.
Yeah.
But you can see everything that we can do. You just can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And so if you look deep enough, you'll see a lot of these kind of subtle, subliminal, political messages throughout Korean cinema.
Yeah. And again, just to chuck a few more out there, stuff like in The Host, there's themes of corporate liability and pollution and effects to the climate through their irresponsibility. Also, corporate responsibility in Okja as well, in terms of the meat industry and how unsustainable it is and how cruel it is. And it can't really continue as it is, but how the media sort of presents, and this is in both The Host and Okja, presents a story to aid these companies and these big businesses so that they can get away with doing what they're doing, and it probably comes down to money at the end of the day. So really good
which
points.
They touch upon a lot. Currency and greed and everything comes across a lot in all aspects of Korean cinema. Another big one is obviously that we got to touch upon as filmmakers is visuals. Something that's always stood out to me is I don't know, there's just something that's always screamed Korean cinema whenever you watch it. It just has this feel and look. I reckon it's definitely got something to do with it. I definitely think they shoot a lot and they compress their blacks, and it's like dulled down but vibrant.
I didn't know how to explain it when I was writing it. It's like controlled, but there's spots of like bold richness.
It's not as like locked down as a lot of films, because not some films will literally just have a strict palette, nothing else can come into this. But then I think Korean cinema obviously does have that. It will have a strict palette, but I feel like it's a lot wider than what you would usually have. And I feel like again this comes into it is for the realism. Is you notice multiple colors every single day. It's just obviously in film, the way it comes across to you is like it speaks to you. You kind of feel the emotion or whatever that coming from a color, or a character's wearing blue in this scene, or it's because they're down, or they're wearing red in this scene, it's because they're angry, or those kind of things you subliminally take into your mind, and you can kind of feel it from the character. But another thing as well is like camera motion. I mentioned earlier about whip pans, crash zooms, extreme close-ups, and I've been looking into it a lot, and it seems like they use a lot of telephoto lenses. And they do this again to create intimacy between the characters. So when you use a telephoto lens on a subject which is which is a close-up, it compresses the background with the subject, so it completely blows out the back as well. So all you really see is a blurred background and the character. And sometimes they're so close up you can't see anything but the character. which again creates that feeling of intimacy. But then also how they contradict this is they sometimes shoot these kind of emotional scenes handheld.
Mm-hmm.
And first off, want to completely give a round of applause to the focus pullers for these scenes, because screw that.
Mad skills.
Yeah. That must be horrible. Like the tiniest margin of focus. But also they do this because as we literally just mentioned, is it has this like unpredictability to it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time you watch film and you'll instantly feel like you can understand where the scene is going. You can feel like, oh yeah, he's going to win this fight. He's going to go over here, or this argument's going to end in a cry and then it's going to cut away. Where this one, it's almost like they just go, right, you've got this whole room to play around with, and then they just tell the operator just to go follow this person.
Yeah.
You need to stay on this person, Do
you know what? This is a little tangent, but I think what it might come down to is over there, although the actors are still stars, they're not quite deified like they are over here. We look at some of the actors like idols, like gods almost. Some people do anyway. To the point where they get an ego where they have to be sort of have to perform in a certain way,
have a level of control,
and organization on everything, so that it doesn't go too far out. However, over in Korea and Asian cinema, although they're probably well known in their home countries, and to a lesser extent worldwide, they're not quite as idolized. Like they're doing well, they make money, but they're not like maybe on Robert Downey Jr. 70 million for Endgame level.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they're more about the acting, the passion for the characters and the emotion and the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
So maybe that has something to do with it as well.
I do.
So the directors trust them more.
I do feel that more. Like if you do go back and look at a lot of director-actor partnerships, there are a lot that stick together in Korean films. There's always a character that you'll see keep popping up that works well with directors, or one director works well with a certain actor.
Yeah.
I do feel that there's a higher level of collaboration where I feel, there's, yes, it's difficult.
I mean, it's not black and white. We're not saying it is this and it isn't that. No, but we're saying you notice certain trends where it seems to be more common over there or less common over here, or vice versa.
Yeah, and it just feels like they just like if you go and look at the Oscars as an amazing example, go look at the crowd reaction for when certain films win and there's the cast and everything there. How the cast react to Bong JoonHo and how they sing his praises the entire time, like director Bong is amazing, he deserves all of this, he is incredible. There's a level of they're on the same plane, basically. They understand that they all need each other to create this one project. Each role is as important as each other. It doesn't matter if you're on the ground level or if you're financing or if you're the head honcho and you're directing or you're producing.
Yeah.
Everything is a collaboration.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's when you will get the best possible outcome, because it's very obvious in sometimes when you can see like a director's went on, he's been too specific or she's been too specific, or an actor's gone onto a set and you can see that they've controlled it a bit too much, and there's like you can feel there's like a lack of chemistry somewhere, and you can just feel it sometimes. Where in a lot of Korean cinema, it just feels organic. It just feels like it flows.
Good word, organic.
Yeah, and feels like everyone's working towards one goal. Everyone's on the same frequency.
There's less egos, basically.
Yeah,
less egos, and I think that's because usually over there, those actors, they're working actors, whereas over here they'll be like actors, but they'll also have a modeling deal or doing other things as well, musician as well, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So they're not as dedicated or focused on the one craft.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, just to go back to your telephoto point, so what Joshy's getting at there is the two main types of lenses, which is prime lenses and zoom lenses. And the prime is a fixed focus point, whereas the zoom lens, it's got a zoom ring, so you can move in and out, basically.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it gives a cinematographer a much more artistic range and expression to be able to alter the framing in camera and on the fly. So like you were saying, these actors are going to do stuff that's maybe not being planned or off the cuff. That cinematographer with the zoom lens can adjust and adapt.
Yeah.
Whereas on a Western film, you'd be like, right, no, cut, we got to set up again. 5 minutes on technical.
It's a lot more locked down.
Yeah.
It feels like in Western cinema where, in Eastern it just feels like, it's not this one area of the set which is hot. It's this whole room is a hot set.
Yeah.
If this actress wants to go and chuck something against that wall, cool. The guy needs to be ready to pan to that, because that's something else as well that you'll notice if you look, say if you put two action scenes side by side, watch how the camera moves to the movement of the weapon going down to hit someone. With Western, the camera is preempting the movement. With Eastern, it's moving after the movement. So it's like a subconscious thing where you're going down with the hit, where before the hit's gone and then you're going down with it because you're like, oh, what happens?
Yeah.
What's going on? Where before you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm ready for this.
Yeah. The beats.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can predict what's going to happen next, essentially. Yeah. I think it's all about predictability. I think Western films like to play it safe because they think they'll alienate audiences or scare them off. Whereas it's the opposite with, foreign cinema in general, but especially Korean and Asian cinema, where they purposely want to keep you on the edge of your seat and they want to confuse and subvert you. And maybe because culturally over there, people are more accepting of it and used to it. And I think over here, we've just been sort of brainwashed, for lack of a better word, where we just expect to see that. Yeah. But then I think a lot of the time people come out of cinema...
You just get used to a formula, don't you?
Yeah. But people complain about it. People are like, oh, yes. I mean, like, I talk to a lot of people now and, a lot of the time, it's a common response to films like, oh, yeah, it was all right. Oh, yeah, it's decent. Or, knew it was going to happen. Like, da-da-da-da. Obviously, that's not for every film. But yeah, I mean, you walk into a Korean or Asian film, especially, even if you watch the trailer or you read the synopsis, I guarantee you'll put on the film and you still won't know what's happening in the next scene. It will still take you by surprise. Yeah, no, actually, what I was going to say about the zoom lenses, maybe why Western cinema doesn't use it as much is because if you look back in Hollywood's history, they're associated with old genre movies, so like thrillers, slasher flicks, blaxploitation films. They all use a lot of these techniques and equipment, and they were mostly used for dramatic or comedic effect. So I think that's something that Hollywood might be afraid of nowadays, because if they're making like a horror film or a film about another serious subject, they think that as soon as they use one of those, whip pans or push pulls, that people are gonna like laugh or not take it as seriously. But that's because they haven't done the supporting work around it with the characters and stuff like that. But which Korean cinema does, so that when they do use these techniques, it's not seen in a comedic way, or it is, but it makes sense for the story that they're trying to tell. Yeah. Yeah. So another example, just quickly, is in The Handmaiden by Park Chan-wook. There's lots of these whip pans and push pulls, and they make a lot of use of the zoom lens there. Yeah. And again, like the handheld style, and I think it's to do with the voyeuristic nature, of the storyline between this love triangle between these three characters, and their sexuality. So yeah, that was it really.
Nice. Should we go into our...
one more quickly. I'm just going to quickly squeeze this in. The score. A lot of the time, the scores are classical or orchestral, even if it's like, in a modern urban setting. And again, I think that's for emotional reasons.
A lot of strings, a lot of brass.
Yeah. Helps build a connection with the audience, locks you in, and then takes you on a roller coaster ride. And I think you can only get that.
And again, it's so extreme as well. This is what we mean. Like you'd listen to it, and if it's your first Korean film and you go in and you watch it, you'll hear the score come out of nowhere, like, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. But it's almost a character in itself.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and you just kind of. is just a way of they grab you by your spine and own you the entire film.
Yeah.
And that is literally
It's
it.
like you're not getting up until I'm finished with you. Yeah.
And they control you in every single way, and it's all to make you feel and experience all the emotions and everything that's going on in the scene, whether it's to make you cringe, curl, cry, laugh.
Yeah.
I guarantee you're going to experience the majority of all of it in one film.
Yeah.
So yeah. Should we go on to some recommendations?
Yeah, that sums up the background and comparisons. And now we're just going to sort of recommend some key films to check out. Most of these are modern ones. Like we said, we haven't had the chance to sort of dive into their back catalogue, which we will do. And another thing is, I do feel like this might be a recurring episode, maybe, or a recurring theme in the episodes. So we might come back and revisit this after we watched more or other types of Korean cinema. So the first one I've got on my list, which we mentioned earlier, is Okja, which was I think a co-production. Was it Western and Korean?
Yeah.
And there is. I mean, I think they speak half Korean and half English altogether.
It mixes quite nicely.
Yeah, but it mixes really well, and it feels. And they do visit other places as well, so it does feel like a world sort of film. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, a classic film from Bong JoonHo, who was also the director of Parasite.
And the host.
Yeah. I mean, this is the other thing. Their good directors are really bloody good, and you'll see that a few of these films on the list all share the same creatives involved. Basically, it's a film about the meat industry, and the way he's done it is by taking one young girl and pairing her with this creature, which is
genetically designed to produce meat.
Yeah,
basically.
By a food company, which I'm sure they're doing now already behind the scenes,
probably
or going to do soon.
Yeah, it's basically in a world where meat's getting scarce as the population of humans is increasing as it is. And they basically look for a scapegoat in their new science of being able to create things genetically.
Yeah, manipulation, I guess.
And so they basically create what they call a super pig.
Yeah.
And they say
a mix between like
a hippo, isn't it?
Hippo, a pig, and maybe a
cow.
Cow. Yeah.
But yeah, they basically say they basically try and get it out that it's okay to kill it because it's a natural evolution. They're trying to say they just found them somewhere and that they're a natural evolution or something like that.
Yeah.
So that
I'm not sure which is worse. Actually.
Some industry would it'd be okay to eat them, because obviously it would then be, is it harmful to people if you've created this in a lab? So if it says that it's natural, then it's okay.
Yeah,
it's part of the world, so you can eat it.
It's part of nature. Yeah.
And they try and play it off like the world's given us this new food source.
Yeah, almost like it's a miracle from God. So we might as well use it.
Yeah. So there's a few.
Yeah, and it's basically about her relationship with Okja, the creature, and very early on, they show that they have a great bond, and not only that, but Okja saves her life. Spoiler alert. Which
quite a few times.
Yeah, quite a few times. But I mean, before all the stuff goes on, when they're just together alone on the farm, before do you know what I mean?
Sweet,
yeah, and it's sort of setting up that just because companies or businesses tell you that this animal is a meat doesn't mean it doesn't have a personality or a life or a consciousness, and doesn't mean it doesn't have feelings like we do. It doesn't mean that we have the right to decide whether it lives or dies. I mean, that's just one of the questions he's bringing up. And asking us to discuss. So yeah, a really cool.
And that's on Netflix as well.
And it's on Netflix,
so it's accessible.
Yeah, easily accessible.
And it's half English and half Korean, so that's a nice kind of.
There's a lot of good actors as well that you recognise.
Jake Gyllenhaal,
Tilda Swinton, Paul Dano.
He's awesome.
Stephen, the one from Walking Dead.
Oh yeah.
Stephen Yuen.
Yes,
the Chinese actor. Apologies if I got your name wrong. So yeah, that's my first recommendation. Do Do you
I
wanna...
see your next one. I'll just go with that one because
Yeah.
I got that one on my list as well. Is
Okay,
the Wailing.
Yeah.
Another one which is on Netflix. So it's starting off strong.
Yeah.
These are all accessible.
Yeah.
Um,
We're not sending you on a
Yeah.
a ghost hunt.
Yeah.
No, you can actually watch these films soon. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a supernatural, I'd say almost detective thriller in a way.
Yeah.
Again, this is so difficult to slap a genre onto
Yeah.
these kind of films. There's a mix of everything. You got family melodrama, you've got supernatural voodoos and spirits, and there's
Yeah. You've got a traditional ghost story and more of a
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a cultish one.
Yeah, you also get introduced to the countryside of Korea in like a
Yes.
small like farming village almost.
Yeah.
So you're gonna learn a little bit culturally as well.
Yeah. And
Um,
about their sort of history and mythology when it comes to the supernatural.
Yeah, and so basically, to try and sum up the film without spoiling anything, is weird things start happening. People start getting possessed, and they start kind of turning into zombie-like
Yeah.
beings.
Well, it's not clear at the start that they're possessed. It
No.
could be like a genuine disease or something like that. But then it quickly becomes apparent there's more to it.
Yeah, so it's like it's meant to be like there's some paranormal disease going around the town, and everyone's pointing fingers at this new Japanese man.
Yeah.
And the story goes from there.
Yeah. He's a loner who lives on the outskirts of town, and yeah. So there's again, this is what I mean about the political issues. Is I don't think you could argue. I think it's quite clear that he's talking about segregation and discrimination, and how we look at foreign people usually first to point the finger at, which is happening right now. Like you just mentioned about the coronavirus. In Oxford, I think it was it a couple of weeks ago? A Chinese guy got beaten up by Oxford students, apparently, who said, "Oh, we don't want you in this country bringing your disease." Now, this is exactly what happens in this film, but it's a Japanese man in Korea and the Korean people of the town pointing the finger at the Japanese man and saying, "Oh, it must be you. You're the devil."
I think I don't think it was a happy accident that the guy was Japanese either, due to obviously there being Japanese occupation. So I feel like, especially in a rural town, a rural little village, I mean, who probably won't be so open to the growing equality of a big city in Korea, where there would be tourists and stuff of all different nationalities.
Yeah,
they're still living in the mindset, from all their past generations of families, because they don't really leave these kind of villages.
No.
Same with here, like you have a family in one place, you normally sprout and grow and have multiple generations at one area.
Yeah.
So if a Japanese man of all people comes in, and then probably your great granddad experienced the
the annexing by Japan.
the rule of Japan, then it's going to be just that much more sore, and you're going to feel that much more threatened.
Yeah.
So yeah. But no, it's a really good thriller film.
Yeah. So on to a third recommendation.
Solid choice.
Yeah. Okay.
The last two, I don't have them. I haven't seen those ones yet.
Okay. Right. So we'll do this one, then you can chuck a couple of yours in. I Saw the Devil. So again, this is one that we've mentioned a lot during this episode. I only saw it this year, recently, and I'm not gutted that I didn't see it before, because I probably would have enjoyed it then as much as I did now. But it is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I don't think I've been as glued to the screen for a long time.
No.
I didn't want to miss a beat.
You constantly feel the imminent threat from both sides.
Constant dread, yeah.
Yeah.
What I liked is how, depending on whose perspective you were following, you were scared either for them or for the other one. Do you know what I mean? And it kept switching. Like, so whether it was for the agent, who is the protagonist, or the serial killer, both of them I was equally afraid of and for. It was really good at, sort of.
Yeah. So this is another Oh, excuse me. Another revenge film
Uh-huh.
where a secret agent wife is brutally murdered,
Mm-hmm.
and he is put on leave from his unit to grieve. But instead of using that time to grieve, he uses that time to exact revenge and hunt down this serial killer. And it is literally just an entire film of cat and mouse chase throughout Korea.
Yeah.
Almost. And
I want to use this as an example because I think this is so applicable. I think it's like a Korean version of Heat, the Michael Mann film with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, but substitute
just the
two main characters.
Pacino part,
just the De Niro and Pacino part, but change De Niro from a bank robber to a serial killer.
Yeah, if
Pacino
it wasn't
from a general cop to a detective, a secret agent.
Yeah, if it wasn't, and then remove all the gang robbery elements.
All of that element.
It was just about them two.
Yeah, but it's the same dynamic.
The scenes that they have together, definitely. Because you'll find this with the protagonist and antagonist in this film is they get in a room and you feel the like hunger to seriously harm one another.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't even want to be in this room with you, but I'm here and I'm along for the ride, so let's go.
Let's do it.
Solid choice, man.
Yeah.
That's up there with mine as well.
Yeah, and it's a great cautionary tale as well, which I feel like a lot of these Korean films definitely have. Is they leave you with an overarching theme or thought to go away with, and this one was, if you play with fire, you're likely to get hurt, and you can only sort of push your luck for so long before it bites back. So yeah, that was Ice for the Devil. Third recommendation. Gonna take it away.
Yeah, my another one is Mother. A little bit harder to locate. It took me a while. I only watched it recently, but it had to go up there with one of my top films. It was I'm not even saying that because I watched it recently, but I want to go and watch it again straight away.
Is this Bong JoonHo?
Bong JoonHo, yeah. Again, like I haven't watched one bad film from this guy yet. It's annoying.
Yeah, he's batting 100. Yeah.
But yeah, the film is basically, to sum it up without spoiling anything, a young boy who has basically learning disabilities. He is overly mothered by his mum, to the point where they sleep together. He's like 22 or something like that, I think, and he still sleeps with her. But he's got mature friends, and they kind of talking to him about, when you're going to get a lady, who do you sleep with? And he's like, my mum, and it's like this really sweet kid. And the mum is just maybe a little bit too mothering.
Yeah.
And that could have been the cause. But basically, he gets caught up in a murder case, and he gets put down for it. And she does everything that she can to clear his name, basically.
Wow.
And it's just this huge... You just feel like... basically everything working against this elderly woman who's just doing everything, spending every single penny that she has, anything to find that information, or even pushing the limits sometimes of finding information to clear her son, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Cool. I love how high concept it is, and just different. Like, I don't think you'd see a Western film like this, and if they did try it, it would fail horribly, like that Sylvester Stallone film. I think it's called Stop or My Mother Will Shoot. 19, you lucky man. He tried his hand at comedy. There's a funny story about it, actually. Sylvester Stallone managed to prank him into taking the role. Sylvester Stallone pretended like he was going to take the role because they were like against each other at the time, both trying to get the best action films out and stuff like that. So he pretended that he was going to do it, and then obviously he turned it down, and then Sylvester went for it, and because he thought that
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Sorry, Arnold. Yeah.
Arnold.
Because he thought that Arnold was gonna do it, Sylvester went in and took it, and it's a really bad film. But that's probably the closest I can think of to anything else like this.
Yeah.
And obviously it's Western, and they just went completely full comedy with it, and it's a terrible film.
They juggle around with a few different things, like obviously, the love of a mum and the connection between a mum and a son. That's really sweet and also a bit weird at times. They also juggle with the idea of how the law can sometimes be a little bit pushy for a conclusion. So because there's this boy who's extremely yeah, I mean, you tell him to say something, he'll say it. You say you need a girlfriend, he'll ask girls to be his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So if you tell him that he killed someone, he'll say, I killed someone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, they just abuse that power over him, basically.
To close the case quickly and make themselves look
and
good.
they close it within like a couple of days, and they all get high fives, and you know, and they kind of just move on with whatever the next case is.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just kind of just feel this weight on the mum, how she just feels constantly put in the corner and defeated, how she can't believe that, you know, it's him, and she's just constantly pushing to get him out so she can love him, basically. Yeah.
So that's Mother. 2009? 2009. Cool. Yeah, not to be confused with the Darren Aronofsky Mother.
Yeah, it's not that Mother.
Yeah. Cool. You got another one?
We mentioned this one before, and most people know about it. It's obviously Oldboy.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen it for some bizarre reason, or you're just getting into Korean cinema, this is one to go and watch.
Yeah.
It has everything in there: action. You even got at the
And
front as well. At the front, up on the poster. Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite films. It has everything. It's got these action scenes to whet your appetite. It's got some twists. I don't want to say too much. It's basically about a guy who gets imprisoned, wrongly imprisoned for a certain amount of time, and he's not allowed to see daylight. He's kind of guessing how long he's been in there, and he marks himself with tallies of how long he's been in there yearly. And he's in there for, God knows how long.
Too long.
I can't remember now.
It's been a while.
I think it's double digits in years. And he basically comes out, and again,
it would be because that's a spoiler.
Anyway, and he goes out to exact revenge again. Yeah,
a very common theme.
In
these films. Cool. You got another one? Do you want to?
I'll let you go.
Yeah. Okay. Just because we did say this was going to be about Asian cinema in general, and we haven't focused much else on Japanese or Chinese. I've put a couple of Japanese ones and a Chinese one in here. So the first one, both of the Japanese ones are by Takashi Miike, who's a very famous Japanese director, and it's called Audition. And basically it's about a guy who becomes a widow. He's a businessman, a rich man, and he's getting lonely, and his friends are telling him, why don't you look for a new person? And he's like, I don't have the time, I'm too busy, I'm working, all of that. And he's like, well, why don't I hold a screening process for you? So basically I'll get all these women, and you can sort of, I guess it's like a blind date sort of situation, and then you pick the best one. And now at the same time there's this girl who's obviously looking on climbing the social ladder, and having more of a comfortable life, and she uses this as an opportunity to sell herself to the main character, the widower, and it just turns out that she's the one that he likes. However, she's not who she appears to be. Basically it's a film. And then what happens next is like it's a descent basically into the dark desires of the human psyche and the price you can end up paying for indulging in them. So again, another sort of cautionary tale. So yeah, that was Audition. And then the other film, which is I think he made directly after, came out in 2001, is called Ichi the Killer, again from Takashi Miike. This is a really cool film. I watched it when I was far too young. Now when I think back on it, it's pretty tame to what's
compared to
compared to what's come out since. But at the time, this was pretty messed up. It's kind of similar to I Saw the Devil in that there's a cat and mouse element, but it's not the same in that they're both kind of antagonists. Basically, sadomasochistic Yakuza member plays cat and mouse with Ichi, who's a repressed psychotic killer. So you've got a sadomasochist and a psychotic killer going toe to toe, basically.
Sick. I just want to watch even more.
Yeah, and this Yakuza member thinks that he's sort of like crazy or ruthless, but actually Ichi is into things that what's his name? Kakihara can only dream of. So yeah, it's notorious amongst film fans for being banned outright in many countries. It still is now banned in a few countries.
Mad.
Which I just think was the point.
Yeah.
But what I think is worth mentioning is that the violence, the high impact violence, and the graphic depictions of cruelty are satirical, and it escalates to the point where it becomes like outrageous, to the point where it's almost a full blown comedy. It's like, yeah. So I don't think, I mean, if you go in knowing what you're watching and what the outcome was supposed to be, you shouldn't look at it as an, oh my god, this is so offensive, or da-da-da-da. Actually, it's sort of what's the word? Almost sort of laughing about how much we're afraid of violence. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's a staple of humanity, like we only got to where we are now through violence. Like if we didn't go to war with other countries and do all this killing and fighting and whatever, we wouldn't have the technology and the stuff that we have now. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like, yes, obviously now to commit random acts of violence is just wrong. You know, it's unnecessary. However, at some point in time, violence was innate with humans. You know, we needed it to survive. So, yeah, a very interesting film. So that is my two Japanese ones. Do you want to?
Yeah. One of the main ones which we've mentioned loads, and obviously we also have a video on which you can watch as well, which is Parasite.
Yeah. Well, it's the reason we're doing this video now.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to talk too much about it because we've done
a video on it
and we did the Oscars.
Yeah. So you can hear what we have to say in that video, but that's definitely one that you should go out. It might even still be in cinemas on a late night screening.
I'd say start with that. Go if it's in cinemas.
Yeah. Go and support it that way, and even watch it a second, third time if you can.
Yeah. And also because it will beef up its box office, which will mean that hopefully we get more of them. Yeah.
And then another one, just to round off my recommendations, is Train to Busan, which I mentioned earlier as well.
Yeah.
It's basically a film about a zombie outbreak in Busan, and they're on a train, so that's the title.
No messing about here.
And yeah, basically it's about a businessman trying to get his daughter to his recently divorced wife for her daughter's birthday. And the outbreak happens while they're on this train ride to Busan. As we said throughout this entire video, this film has absolutely everything. It has metaphors, comedy, action. Even Edgar Wright, who's the director of Shaun of the Dead, said it's probably one of the best zombie films ever, and I'd back that up with saying it's probably one of the best zombie films ever. It's fresh, it's original, and I guarantee you, if you do not cry at the end, you're a monster. It is horrible. It is horrible. And take that in whatever way you want. Because as we've said throughout, there's twists and turns, and sometimes you may get the conclusion that was needed, but it's not always the one that you expected.
You wanted. Or bittersweet. I think is probably the best way to sum up Korean films. It's you get a bit of both in there.
So that's definitely one to watch. And
just a quick question: do you know the young Rounders guy? Is that Kevin from Parasite?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is, yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's an actor from Parasite in Train to Busan.
Yeah, the main kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um,
I thought I recognised him.
yeah, but that also got a wide UK DVD Blu-ray distribution. I think it's just there as well. So yeah, so you can pick that up. It's probably a lot cheaper now as well. It's probably.
In fact, we've got most of the films here we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, so that's definitely one.
Yeah. And my last one, I just want to chuck in here Hero, because we don't have any Chinese ones in here. Which people should be aware of because this was from the last sort of surgence of Eastern cinema. The Jet Li helmed film. It's just a period action epic masterpiece from Zhang Yimou, who did House of Flying Daggers, Shadow, and Curse of the Golden Flower. Yeah, like Takashi Miike, he's probably China's most prominent filmmaker, I'd say. It's just a story of a nameless officer in the Qin dynasty who was summoned by the king to recount his success story regarding the assassination of 3 formidable warriors. And as he's recounting these stories, you realise there's more to the stories than the king realises. And yeah, there's a big twist in the end. Yeah, so it's one of my favourite films, actually, I'd probably say. It's just really beautiful.
Yeah.
The visuals, the story, the acting, everything.
Yeah, I'd say if that's something that you enjoy, there are a few films out there as well. There is this one here, The Assassin. If you literally just wanted to sit back and just experience just pure beautiful cinematography, set design, everything, that's one to watch. You do have to have a bit of patience with it, but
yeah. Do you know what? I would actually break it down like this: Chinese cinema for the period and martial arts films and just the beautiful, stunning visuals and like production design.
Yeah.
I'd probably say Japanese for like straight horror films, more horror.
They claimed that, really.
Yeah.
I think Korea is moving towards that, but because they mix it with everything else,
mix it
you
with
can't
everything.
really
Yeah,
say
you can't
that.
define it. I was going to go more.
Horror.
Yeah, I was going to go more on
Thriller.
the thriller, revenge,
melodrama.
Yeah, I'd break it down like that. You know.
Yeah, solid. Yeah, that works.
So, is that
that's
all
it
of our recommendations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some honourable mentions.
Is it necessary?
You just chuck them out there. People can list them if they've got their notepads out.
Yeah.
I
would be if I was watching.
If you made it this far. So yeah, just to conclude, when I said
At
Oldboy,
some point I'm gonna have to get films tattooed on me. Otherwise I forget. I've got so many notepads around with films on.
You're just losing the notepads. Just to round up what we've been saying with Oldboy, the Vengeance trilogy. So it's Sympathy for Mr. You can watch these in any order. There's no order.
Yeah.
So there's Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, then it goes Oldboy, and then Lady Vengeance. And then also just because they are linked with Park Chan-wook, who's the director of those. I've also got down here The Host.
Yep.
The Host. Handmaiden.
Yeah.
Handmaiden. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of feel like it should have been in our recommendation list. But we mentioned it now anyway. So yeah. The Handmaiden. I do need to watch it again, I think.
Yeah, same.
Before
There's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is a lot, yeah. Is that
Thirst as well.
Oh, you got an awesome one that I just spotted that I completely missed out, and I should have put as one of my recommendation. The bottom one.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to say it?
Battle Royale.
I can't believe I forgot this one. Jeez. Yeah.
That was
incredible Japanese.
Yeah, I was thinking back to foreign films that kind of got me into Asian cinema.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was like really young watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
But then also something that like more sparked my gruesome need for horror was Battle Royale.
Yeah.
It's just this.
I just remember like the opening scene from that film with with the girl on the island and there's all the news reporters and she's like covered in blood and she's got like a teddy in her hands or something.
Yeah,
like,
and then she's like smiling.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa, what is this film?
Yeah. So basically, it's just to quickly go over that one, if it interests you, if you haven't heard of it already. It's basically when there's misbehaving classes in Japan, they sign you up for a TV show where they put you on an island with loads of weapons and the last one alive wins.
Yeah.
And that's how they teach you to be good students.
Yeah. So it's basically
in Japan.
kids killing kids. Gosh. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Highly recommended.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend the sequel much though. It's very weird
Didn't.
and confusing.
Didn't even bother.
Yeah. Don't. Wow. Anyway, is that your list? You got anything else you wanna?
The host didn't quite make my recommendations. I feel there'd be too much in there, but definitely check out if you're into monster flicks, and you just want to dive deeply.
Yeah.
And then also The Good, the Bad, the Weird.
Yeah.
As
Is
well.
that Kim Ji-woon?
Yeah, same director as
I Saw the Devil. Yeah. It's got the same main actor as well, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Who you'll recognise from G.I. Joe, I think.
Oh yeah, shit, yeah.
He plays Storm Shadow in those films. So yeah, and I got a couple of honourable mentions. Did the Raid count? Raid 1 and 2?
Indonesian?
Yeah. I think people know about them anyway, but if you haven't seen them, probably some of the best action films to come out in the past 5-10 years.
They created and basically gave Indonesia a film industry.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The other one is Dumplings by Fruit Chan, which is a Chinese horror film. Yeah. It was also part of the Three Extremes. So back in the early 2000s, I remember there was this like common thing where 3 directors would hook up and they would make like a film and put 3 segments together. Yeah.
Did Bong JoonHo do one of those called Tokyo?
Yes. Yeah, he did.
Oh.
But this isn't the one I'm talking about, Three Extremes. But yeah, there was another one, Tokyo. There was that one.
Interesting.
There was like Lars von Trier and a couple of other Dutch filmmakers did one as well.
No way.
But yeah, this one was like a cross Asian one. So there was Dumplings.
It's like a director challenge.
Yeah, literally. But this one they had a Korean, a Chinese, and a Japanese director doing each segment. Yeah, and obviously the Chinese segment was Dumplings. And yeah, it's pretty messed up. It's about this lady who people go to for her dumplings, which is obviously like traditional Chinese food, and apparently it makes you very like healthy and gives you vitality, and people are even saying it making them beautiful. And so this one girl becomes obsessed with obviously trying these dumplings. Anyway, it turns out the woman who's creating these dumplings is putting something a bit unconventional into them. In fact, they come from an unconventional place.
Ooh.
You could actually probably compare this a bit to Neon Demon, a little bit, if you get what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, another one worth watching. I've got a few others on there, but I think I'm happy with what we...
Do you just want to list them out?
Yeah, okay, I can do. So
for that one person with their notepad out.
Yeah, for the one
come
person.
on, guys, come on.
Yeah, you may have heard of Reihue Kitamura, who did Godzilla Final Wars. Before that, he had a really cool, interesting indie career. It started with a film called Versus, which is about it's a zombie film, really. It's about apparently there's 666 portals to hell on Earth, and in Japan, in the Forest of Resurrection is the 444th, and yeah, it's opened and there's creatures coming in from the other side, and there's this cool hero who you don't really know much about, but it doesn't matter because he's got a leather jacket and a samurai sword, and it's just crazy. It's nuts. It's really cool. So that's that one. He also did Azumi and Sky High, which one is a period based on an anime, I think. Azumi, about a female warrior. And Sky High is about...
They both came out in 2003.
Yes.
Busy man.
Yeah. He was really on it back in the day. I used to be a huge fan of him. Even Godzilla Final War. Also, the original The Grudge by Takashi Shimizu. The original Dark Water by Hideo Nakata, who also did the original Ring. Now, I put the original Ring on here as well, because I think it's worth watching, but it's very different from the American one. And I would say I probably actually prefer the American one. It's one of the few remakes that I actually just about enjoy more than the original. But I still think it's worth watching because it's very different, as in it's not, I wouldn't even call it a horror film. It's more suspense.
Nice.
Scary suspense thriller. Yeah. So yeah, that is... Oh, and there's one more, The Eye by Danny and Oxide Pang, which is again about a girl who gets an eye transplant. this was remade with Jessica Alba terribly
No, I was
around
about to say
in 2005, and I think that was when the decline of Asian cinema was around as well. Yeah, the original is really good. It's about a girl who gets an eye transplant and she can see dead people, basically, kind of like Sixth Sense vibes. Yeah, really cool film.
Nice.
So yeah,
Awesome.
sums up everything, I think.
Yeah. Sweet. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for listening for an hour and 45 minutes.
Not bad. I really thought I was going to be a 3-hour one. Jeez. Cool.
So yeah, if you made it this far, thanks a lot. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening on any of the streaming platforms, podcast streaming platforms, give us a like or a follow, depending on what platform you're on.
Yeah.
We've also got Instagram, so that's at studio7films.co.uk, and that works across Facebook also. We've also got a website with loads of information on.
Yeah.
And our own personal accounts as well, where we basically just repost.
Yeah.
What
we post on the Studio
what we
7
post on the
page.
Studio
Yeah.
7.
But yeah, we've also got Amazon Prime account where you can watch some of our earlier filmography, short films. So if you've got Prime, you can watch them for free.
Yeah, and we've kind of got a homage to Korean cinema
100%,
on there
yeah.
For our recent short.
Wait, change our honourable mention. Watched 2019, directed Joshy Lee.
So yeah, if you can, check that out. It's a film we released November last year, 2019. All the links are in the description. We got a few other films up on Amazon as well, so check that out.
Yeah, and feel free to comment, mention any films that we missed out that you think is worth watching, or ones that you agree with, or ones that you don't agree with. And yeah,
or any that we haven't seen.
Yeah, that you think we should watch.
That you think we should watch, because we got a notepad as well.
Yeah,
ready to go.
So until next time, I think that about sums it up. We might do a follow-up video if we've seen more Asian or Korean films.
Yeah, it all will work it into film reviews.
Yeah.
We'll do something.
We'll do something for you.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
See you in a bit.
Sayonara.